Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. It is great to be back with you on this wonderful day as we review the SEC Championship game against the Georgia Bulldogs. Another great podcast on Alabama football coming your way today, folks. It's great to be here. Great to know all the things that we know today about being in the playoffs, beating Georgia. And we got a great show lined up for you today. I want to thank Lance right off the top of the bat before we do anything else. I want to thank Lance Shores. This couldn't be possible without him. Everything that he does each and every week to produce this podcast, to make it look so well, to sound so good. And I just want to thank Lance. I couldn't do this without him. We're coming down to a close of the season. He's worked hard all year. And I want you to go out there and look at his sites, rolltidebama.com, freelancepictures.com. Some great sites out there on Alabama football. I'm sure we'll have some great content as we go through the next month leading up to the semifinal playoff game. So be sure and check out his sites. But today on the podcast, we want you to listen to the segment's going to be a little different because we don't have a game next week. But in the first segment, we're going to review the game against the Georgia Bulldogs. In the second segment, we're going to look at our players of the game against Georgia. And in our third and final segment, we're going to preview the playoff preparation as we get forward to playing the Michigan Wolverines out in the Rose Bowl in the semifinal playoff. You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at tide100.9.com. Well, welcome back here to the first segment of the DC Capstone Report. It is fun to be with you each and every week. Lance and I are so excited to have this podcast, and the number of views we've had, the number of responses, the number of people that talked to us and commented on it. We're just amazed at the number of people who want to listen to this each and every week. But we thank you for doing that. And so this podcast today is a culmination of the regular season, and Alabama concluded it with a victory in the SEC Championship game against the Georgia Bulldogs, including a complete shutout of all the SEC teams, and going no losses in the SEC to win the game and win the SEC Championship 27-24 right there in Atlanta, and taking away a 12-1 record, which we know now catapulted them up from 8th to 4th in the playoff championship series, and we'll be able to contend for a national championship. So folks, right here, I can't go any further without saying this. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that all those naysayers out there that were complaining after the loss to Texas and then the poor showing against South Florida, who would have thought that we would be in this position today? Well, I say the Alabama team thought they would. The players definitely thought they would. The coaches thought they would. And yours truly, DC, here with the DC Capstone Report, has said every week that everything that we had to play for was in front of us. And that if we won every game, we wouldn't be excluded from the playoffs. And that's exactly what happened. I have to give credit to the committee. I think they got it right. It was a hard decision. I hate it for Florida State. I hate it for the fans of Florida State. We would have definitely been disappointed if Alabama had left out. So I appreciate it and I understand it. But it is the right decision. The four teams that got in are the four teams that I think should have gotten into the playoff based on their play on that championship Saturday. So here we go. Review the Georgia game. I thought going in last week in our podcast, we covered it pretty well on what needed to happen. And I believe that two of the three things that we said needed to happen happened in that game. And what I mean by that is I said we need to start fast. Well, we didn't start very fast. We didn't do well on the first drive. Georgia goes down, puts it in for a touchdown, and we did not do well on our first time we got the ball. We ended up having a punt. So it didn't look good the first drive, but I have to give this Alabama football team credit. They checked off the other two boxes that I said had to happen, and that was mistake-free football, make no mistakes, and they had to stop Georgia's run, had to stop Georgia from running the ball. And that's exactly what Alabama did in this game. And they had to win the line of scrimmage and run the ball. And that's exactly what Alabama did in this game to win this game. They left some yards on the field. I think they could have run more. But it looked like Milroe saving his legs for that last two plays was the right call. I didn't agree with it earlier. I thought he should have run more. But I thought he had fresh legs. He was able to get those last 2 first downs that we needed to run out the clock on that drive. And I think how fitting it was to start in the game with a great defensive stand by Alabama. Got the ball on offense. That finally Georgia goes down and scores. Then we get the ball back, and Alabama has to win it on offense. And the offensive line had to do the job. So I think in this game, when you review that, you look at the total stats. The one that sticks out to me is Alabama held Georgia to 78 yards rushing. And what that did was late in the game, it caused them to be in passing downs where they had to pass the ball. And really our defense played, other than that first drive, and other than a bust by a player in the secondary on one play, I think we held that team in check. The second stat I think that jumps out to you when you look at the individuals is that Kendall Milton, the running back who was running so well, he only averaged 3.2 yards a carry for 42 yards, 13 carries for 42 yards. And then DeJohn Edwards, their other running back, he only averaged 3.8 yards a carry, so 10 carries for 38 yards. And if you look at their 2 offensive explosive players, Brock Bowers, who really did a lot to hurt us in the last time we played them, he had 5 receptions for 53 yards, no touchdowns. And then Ladd McConkey had 3 receptions for 38 yards and 0 touchdowns. And so what I thought was impressive in this game was we held them rushing the ball to a deep big rushing attack. We did such a great job of doing that. And then we held them to absolutely 0 passing touchdowns. No big plays, no big chunk plays for touchdowns. And I thought that was a big thing in this game. So my observation of this game for our defense was we held them rushing yards down low to set under 100 yards, and then we did not give up any big touchdown plays to Brock Bowers or Ladd McConkey or for anyone else for that matter. Held them a big goose egg on touchdowns on pass plays. They did get touchdowns running the ball, but they were down close to the goal line and within sneak range or short yardage range to get those plays. But Alabama comes away with a big victory, 27-24. And on offense, I think Alabama did a good job of having a balanced attack on offense. They had 192 yards passing and 114 yards rushing. They were 2 for 2 on 4th down. I think that was big. But having no mistakes, no lost fumbles, no interceptions, and only 3 penalties for 36 yards was a huge improvement. So I really believe that Alabama did a good job in this game. My overall, just a kind of a helicopter view to jump back and take a look at this whole thing. I believe Alabama went into this game with a chip on their shoulder, and they played that way. They played with a chip on their shoulder. They felt like they were disrespected. That motto of blank let all naysayers know that they have held on to since that Texas game was true in this game. I think once they settled in, and I believe Kevin Steele made some adjustments. I believe Tommy Reese made some adjustments. I think it was the first time they'd seen a 2-player spy on Milroe to keep him from running early, and they began to take advantage of that with some short passes. Milroe improvised really well to get the ball to the right people. And so I think 2 things, the chip on the shoulder that they played with and the execution of the coordinators to change and adapt to the game, the way the game was played, really made a difference. And the third thing I think made the difference was the defense aggressiveness. I believe we were aggressive. We were the more aggressive team all day long. Even after that drive, we didn't go in the tank. We didn't let adversity affect us as it has in past games. And we really bowed up and played a great defensive game. And we beat the number 1 team in the nation. We beat the team that had not been beat in 29 games, playing their 30th game. So we stopped the streak, and we stopped Georgia from three-peating in the national championship because they couldn't make the playoffs after that loss. Those are all big. And if you look at the whole thing, Georgia has beaten everybody that they played, including Alabama in the championship game. But the only 2 losses they've had have come to Alabama in the SEC championship game. So I really think that Coach Saban did all he could do. One of the best coaching jobs I think he's ever had in the years that he's been at Alabama, to take this team to the level that they achieved by beating the Georgia Bulldogs and winning what in modern day era would be the last SEC championship with divisions. There'll be no more divisions. There'll be SEC championships, but there'll be no more divisions. So I think they did a great job of winning this game and establishing themselves with the ability to play the next game for the national championship. Well, welcome back to the DC Capstone Report. We're about to do the second segment where we talk about our players of the game. Before we do that, though, I want to thank our sponsors that all year long. RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com has been so good, doing such a great job out there sponsoring our program. And Lance has some great sites. So you go out there and you look at those sites so that you can see some great Alabama football content. And then our sponsor all year long, our new sponsor we picked up at the beginning of the year, has been with us all year long. That's Karen Cottingham, Realtor with the Williams Group at Keller Williams. Right here in Tuscaloosa for all your real estate needs. You want to buy that condo? She's got a condo for you right across from the practice field. If you want to buy that condo, call her. Check out her inventory right there on www.karen.thewilliamsgroupal.com. She can service you all over the state of Alabama. It doesn't matter where you are in the state. She can take care of you. She has great customer service. Everyone that's used her has given her great reviews. So her phone number is 205-887-4008. Again, that's Karen Cottingham, Realtor with the Williams Group at Keller Williams right here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Well, let's look at the second segment. We're going to look at our players of the game. Well, we're going to start on offense. I don't think we can go anywhere on offense except right to the quarterback. The man himself, Jalen Milroe, is one of my offensive players of the game. He has improved so much. I don't think any player in college football all season has improved as much as Jalen Milroe has. From being replaced to coming back and being a good teammate and coming back and improving each and every week. In every phase of the game, I think he's done good. The only thing I can fault him for in this game, I believe he stayed in the pocket too long on occasion. But other than that, I think he played a really, really good game. No fumbles, no interceptions that were lost or caused a problem. And really made no mistakes. Maybe missed a couple of wide open receivers and went to a different receiver, but who can fault him for that with the way the defense of Georgia was pressuring him and playing him. So, but I think he did a fabulous job in this game. I don't think any greater feat was getting his position to win the game, but in the end, putting the ball in Jalen Milroe's hands lets you know how much respect, how much appreciation, and how much trust they have in him as a quarterback. If he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, I don't know who is. I think he's right up there with Michael Penix and Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix as being one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, and he proved it in this game, leading us to the SEC championship. My second offensive players of the game has to be right there in front of him. He couldn't do what he did without a great protection and great blocking from this offensive line. And if the second most improved position on this team, in my opinion, is offensive line. And from left to right, Caden Proctor, he has improved immensely, had another great game, didn't give up a sack in this game. The only sacks that were given, I believe, was because of Milroe staying in the pocket too long. Nobody missed an assignment that I could tell. Everybody did really well. But from Caden Proctor to Tyler Booker, Seth McLaughlin, Jaden Roberts, and J.C. Latham all imposed their will on this Georgia defense. And I mean that, folks. They improved so much. They controlled the line of scrimmage. We ran the ball when we had to run the ball to run out the clock, and they were still whipping Georgia even up into the last whistle was blown. So Jaden Roberts has been a great addition. I call his number out, number 77. If you get a chance to watch him, probably one of the most powerful blockers that we've seen in that guard position in quite some time. He and Tyler Booker at guards, they just really maul block and put some people on their back in this game. So I think they're much improved and were the reason we won this SEC championship game. So with that, Jalen Milroe and the offensive line are my offensive players in the game. On defense, I want to call out two players I think were just instrumental. I think our defense was well-rounded all day long. They did a great job. There were multiple players that I could have picked, like Malachi Moore and Caleb Downs, and they had great games. Trey Amos coming in at the last minute there to replace Kool-Aid McKinstry, and he did a fabulous job. But, you look at the bookends, and Braswell and Turner did great. Along the line, Otis and Boygby, all those did great. But I want to spotlight two people that I think really held this defense together in this game and showed how great this defense really is and how even greater it can be. And that is Deontay Lawson. Deontay Lawson is the middle linebacker that makes this defense run together. He's the one that calls the plays, puts them in the right position. All the movement that Georgia used didn't confuse this defense, and they were able to get in the right position to make plays. And Deontay Lawson not only did that, but he was in the game fiercely, aggressively pursuing sideline to sideline and making stops in the running game that held this Georgia team to 78 yards rushing. My other defensive player of the game is Terrion Arnold. I can't say enough about Terrion Arnold as a cornerback. You know, he did such a great job in this game coverage-wise. He got a offensive pass interference in this game, which I thought was questionable, but he was stuck on their receivers like glue. And when you hold their receivers to no touchdowns, you know the defensive backs are doing a great job, and they all did a great job, including Malachi Moore and Caleb Downs and Kool-Aid McKinstry and Trey Amos. But Terrion Arnold, I believe, was superb in this game, as he has been all year. Did a good job in run support, and did a good job playing in phase when he was being thrown out, or when he wasn't being thrown out. He was still sticking to his players like glue. And I just think he is, no pun intended, the glue that holds this defense together, both emotionally and physically on the field. So my defensive players of the game are Deontay Lawson and Terrion Arnold. Well, welcome back to the third and final segment of this podcast on Alabama football. I want to thank again Lance Shores back in the studio, who's doing all the prep and producing this podcast each and every week. Go out and look at his websites, oldtownbama.com, freelancepictures.com. I want to thank our sponsor, Karen Cottingham Realtor, right here at the Williams Group at Keller Williams. For all your real estate needs, you can contact her at 205-887-4008. Well, here we are coming to the third segment. Usually we talk about the game that's coming up next week, but right now we didn't have a game. We got into the playoff, and we're going to be looking forward to a game in about a month against the Michigan Wolverines. We're going to have plenty of time to put up a podcast. We're going to take a couple of weeks off around Christmas, and then we're going to come back with a podcast to get ready for the game the week of the game. But let's talk about playoff prep. What's going on? Well, we're on an emotional high right now. We get picked for the playoff, and there's a lot of naysayers out there. You can listen to any other podcast or any of these people who are talking out there. There's plenty of them that want to talk about how horrible it is that Alabama got in and that Florida State got left out. Well, somebody got left out here. If you know your history, you know that it's crazy to talk about that without talking about other things that have happened. Everybody says no Power 5 school has ever been left out that went undefeated and won their conference championship. Well, that's not entirely correct. Historically, they have been left out of the championship series, not left out of the playoffs, but left out of the championship series. As a matter of fact, I believe it was 1993 when Bobby Bowden's FSU team lost late in the season, not early, lost late in the season, but still made it into the bowl championship series over an undefeated West Virginia team. So don't tell me that it hasn't happened before and that Florida State has actually benefited from it. Yes, I feel for the team. I feel for the players. I feel for the coaches who worked hard to win 13 games. But you can't tell me that the team that beat Louisville on Saturday night is better than the four teams that got in. Each one of those teams in the current condition of this Florida State team would beat Florida State on a neutral field. And I believe even Georgia and Ohio State would beat them on a neutral field. Maybe even some of the other teams like Oregon might beat them as well. So so Florida State gets left out. It's horrible in a sense for their fans and their coaches. But for everyone else, we need to look at it as put it in perspective. It's happened before. It's happened before in the bowl championship series, and it's happened before in just the poll championships. Go all the way back to 1966 when Alabama had one of the best teams that has ever played football. Would have been a three-peat for a national championship and win every game that's before them and plays them for an undefeated season in the bowl. But the AP poll jumped a fifth-ranked Notre Dame team with one loss above them, who tied a game with a tie that year in their game against in their bowl game. So it has happened before in the AP poll championships. It's happened in the bowl championship series, and now it's happened in the playoff series. This year could have been completely different for Florida State if their president and if the president of the ACC had not have blocked us going to a 12-team field this year. They blocked it. So if we had a 12-team field, Florida State would have been in, and this will change next year when we do have that 12-field team. So I'm not going to say anything else except this. Everybody on TV, on the talking heads, are talking about how Alabama got in as a one-loss SEC champion over an undefeated Florida State. Nobody's talking about how Texas got in as a one-loss champion, Big 12 champion over Florida State. No one's mentioning that. Why? Because of the Alabama SEC bias that exists among media that doesn't like Alabama Coach Saban to succeed. Well, I got news for you. Texas should be there. Alabama should be there. Washington and Michigan are there as undefeated teams, and that is the Final Four that'll play for the national championship. So coming up in the weeks ahead, we're going to review and we'll look at a preview of what's going on. But what's happening right now in this bowl prep? Well, Coach Saban said, we're on an emotional high. We got to come down for that and get back into the mode of playing the next game. But he doesn't want to over-practice and doesn't want to put them in a position to overthink it. So he's going to have them some time off, and they need it. They need some time off to rest mentally, rest physically, and to come back into this. Plus, they'll be hearing all these naysayers talk about how they shouldn't be there, and they're already an underdog to Michigan so far in the first point spread. I think the line came out at 2 points, Michigan favorite. But you got Alabama and Michigan, the two winningest football programs in America history, going at it in the granddaddy of them all, Rose Bowl, for a college football playoff. What a game, what an atmosphere, and what something to get ready for. Well, I think Coach Saban is going to meet with all the team players. They're going to find out what their plans are for their future, who's going to enter the portal, who's not going to enter the portal, who's going to play in the game, who's not going to play in the game, who's going to go into the NFL draft. All those discussions will happen during time off, and they'll have some much-needed time away. So that's what's going on during this bowl prep. But believe me, Alabama will come back ready. Alabama will come back with a chip on their shoulder because all these naysayers, all they're doing is setting Alabama to come up and play. And I believe early on, as we preview this game against Michigan, Alabama's strengths are going to play into Michigan's weaknesses, and Alabama's going to be set up for a good opportunity to win this game played out there in the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. Well, that's it for the podcast today. I hope you all appreciated and understanding my belief in that Alabama should be there. I know some people disagree with that in the national media, but I don't. I think Alabama deserved it. They won it on the field, fair and square by beating the number one team, the Georgia Bulldogs. So that's all this week for the podcast. I look forward to seeing you again. We're going to take, like I said, a couple of weeks off for Christmas, and we'll be back in preparation for the bowl game the week before we hit that last week of December. Until then, this is DC with the DC Capstone signing off. The DC Capstone Report signing off with a big Roll Tide.